Now, the growing tensions in the Middle East, as we mentioned, many nations continue to be gripped by violent confrontations. We're joined now from New York by Mona Eltahawy. She is a columnist and public speaker on a variety of Arab and Muslim issues. Thanks for joining us, Mona.
Hi, Jacqueline.
I want to ask you initially, when we saw and we watched Egyptian protesters succeed in ousting Hosni Mubarak for more than 30 years of power, many people thought, well, you know, here's the indicator of how other nations will fall, other dictatorships will fall. But what we're seeing in certain countries like Yemen, Libya, Bahrain, it seems quite different. And many analysts say the difference is in the makeup of the military. Is it?
You know, it's interesting, that point about Egypt, because I always refer to Hosni Mubarak, the dictator of Egypt, as the Berlin Wall. And when he fell, you know, we knew that there was going to be this kind of freedom fever that would sweep across the region. And I think what you're seeing is that dictators in the region have taken a lesson to crack down very harshly. And the people in the region have also learned from that lesson in that they too deserve freedom. What we're hearing from people on the ground in Libya, for example, where it's very difficult to get information, is that members of Gaddafi's armed forces, or Gaddafi himself, has brought into his armed forces mercenaries from other countries in Africa. We're also hearing that some members of the security forces in Bahrain were also foreign workers. So the message, I think, is that people are having a really hard time understanding how the various regimes in the region could be so brutal in cracking down on people. And obviously the lesson that those regimes have taken from Egypt and before it Tunisia is that if, as in the case of the Egyptian armed forces, you don't shoot, you don't open fire at your people, this will somehow embolden them. But we should also remember that the armed forces in Egypt were not all, you know, kind of saints, because we know the military police there were arresting, detaining and torturing people. I think that regimes are struggling mightily to contain this freedom fever. And as one man in Algeria put it so eloquently today, those countries might be independent of colonialism, but they are not free because they're ruled by a series of dictators. Gaddafi has been in power since 1969.
Right. So what that makes, I think I saw a figure, 42 years or something like that. So many people are saying he is the one who's been running the longest standing dictatorship in that part of the world. What about that? Many people say he has worked, to extend his reach to all the various tribal leaders within his country, that he is well connected that way, that he will not fall. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's the business that he's basically maintained. That's what's allowed him to stay in power since he took over in 1969 as a 27-year-old colonel in a bloodless coup. What he's done is he's taken Libya's tremendous oil wealth and set up and basically bought out all these tribal alliances, and especially around Tripoli, because what we're seeing right now is in the eastern parts of Libya, especially Benghazi and other towns and cities around it. But Tripoli is considered to be his stronghold, and I think that's really going to be the challenge. I hear from Libyans who have been tweeting either on the ground before he shut down the internet, because like Hosni Mubarak, he shut down the internet, but they were hearing from their relatives and through phone calls that they're trying to spread the pro-freedom and pro-democracy rallies to Tripoli, and that really will be the challenge.
Okay, so that's Libya. What about a place like Bahrain, which we know it hosts the U.S. naval fleet? So key in terms of, defense strategy for the United States. Then you look at, the interests in Yemen, the fact that Al-Qaeda has set up its base there. I mean, there's a lot at stake for the United States. How do they go about trying to support democratic movements and democratic rights of people within these nations where they have key and strategic and vital interests?
That's a great question, Jacqueline, and that really is the challenge, because you saw how the U.S. administration and State Department was really caught wrong-footed when the uprising started in Egypt. And again, Hosni Mubarak was a major ally. As you mentioned, you have now the Al-Qaeda issue and the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. The Bahraini issue is especially complicated for the United States because the Fifth Fleet is there basically to ensure the free and safe flow of oil, but also to act as a buffer against Iran, which is a majority Shia country. Bahrain is also a majority Shia Muslim country, but it's ruled by a Sunni minority. And that Sunni minority, not to make it even more complicated, is supported by Saudi Arabia, which is, again, a majority Sunni country. But it's not just in the interests of the United States that things remain quote unquote stable, but also in the interest of Saudi Arabia, another major US ally. So I think you'll see a lot of kind of hypocrisy and double standards, to be quite honest with you, because people are being killed, peaceful protesters are being killed, the Bahraini royal family are using this sectarian card, but I know Sunnis and Shia who are in the streets of Bahrain demanding freedom, demanding their right to write a constitution, demanding an end to torture, and that has nothing to do with Iran or sectarianism. So I think once again the people on the street in the Middle East have outpaced the United States, and you're going to find a lot of red faces as people try to, on the one hand, support their allies, but on the other, support freedom as they claim to.
Yeah, it is extremely complex, as you touched upon. We'll continue to watch it. Mona Eltahawy, she's a columnist and a public speaker on many Arab and Muslim issues, joining us this hour. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacqueline.